Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. You're logged on to Travel Oregon's Tour Operators, Guides, and Outfitters online forum. Successfully manage finances and build profit. It's great to see you all. Feel free to throw in your name and organization in the chat if you'd like to introduce yourself while I'm going through the intro here. So we're planning an interactive program today that will include a presentation, but also plenty of time for discussion. Before we dive in, I'll share a few housekeeping items. So you can use the chat function to introduce yourself, like I just mentioned. Feel free to also post questions and share your insights along the way. And we ask that everyone stays on mute until the breakout sections later in the program. And FYI that this forum is being recorded and will be available on Travel Oregon's YouTube channel for later viewing. And you'll also see that we have closed captioning going on. We're doing this to support the accessibility of this program, and it will also be included in the video recording that will be posted later. Lastly, if you experience any technical difficulties, you can chat me, Jordan McCauley, and I will do my best to help you. Just realized that I didn't introduce myself. My name is Jordan McCauley. Once again, I'm on Travel Oregon's Destination Development team as a coordinator. It's great to see all of you here, some familiar faces. And lastly, I wanted to note that Travel Oregon held our State of the Industry webinar yesterday, which was a look back at the past year and a look forward on Oregon's tourism industry. And that will also be shared on Travel Oregon's YouTube channel, and I'll share that link later in the program. All right, so diving in, go to the next slide, Melanie. There we go.
You see the slide?
All right, so, yep, looks good. Want to remind everyone that Travel Oregon is here to support you. We're deeply invested in strong and sustainable communities and see the tour operator, guide, and outfitter community as critical businesses to help achieve this vision. So we continue to provide programming to support you in your business, both during COVID-19 and beyond. And just a quick side note, you'll occasionally hear us say TOGO. This is the acronym for Tour Operator, Guide, and Outfitter. Sometimes it's easier to use shorthand. That's quite the long name. So if you hear TOGO, that is what we're referencing. All right, and then today is the first of two forums that we'll be offering in March. You could go to the next slide, Melanie. The next one, March 24th, is Enhance Your Bottom Line Through Tourism-Related Vendors. We'll be sharing the registration link in the chat at the end of the program today. And the next slide. And just to reiterate, the forum's intended outcomes: receive technical guidance to support tour operators, guides, and outfitting businesses to safely operate during COVID-19 and beyond. Share and hear about business experiences while they're seeking input from industry peers, and meet and network with industry peers to support a more collaborative industry in Oregon. So with that, I'd like to jump into introductions. And we'll start with Melanie, who is our session moderator and facilitator. Melanie Fisher, the founder of Consulting Sensei. She's also helping us develop and deliver these forums. She has a lot of tangible experience in the tour operator guide space, so she's a great resource to have, and we're really happy to be delivering our second series with her that is virtual. Her favorite outdoor activity is mountain biking, snowboarding, and supping, stand-up paddleboarding. So those are actually three categories. She's definitely the Pacific Northwest adventure master. But before I hand it over to Melanie, we also like to introduce our partners in developing and delivering these forums. Great. So Priscilla Macy, as some of you may know, the Oregon Outfitter and Guides Association recently announced their new executive director, Priscilla. That was back in January, and we're happy to be partnering with Priscilla and Oregon Outfitter and Guides Association to offer these series to help meet the needs of the TOGO community. So I'll pass it to Priscilla for a minute to say a few words.
Hey folks, we're pretty excited to be partnering on these workshops and hope that you all find them valuable and get some good takeaways from it. Just a quick background on Oregon Outfitters and Guides Association. We're Oregon's Outfitter and Guide Industry Association. We do everything from helping our businesses and owners navigate the permitting process, with collaborating and facilitating with land managers, both federal and state level, as well as doing advocacy overall for our industry on the business side, as well as public lands and conservation and recreation things at the federal and state level. One of the things that we've most recently been embedded in is COVID economic relief and supporting our businesses as regulations change and adapt as we go into our summer season, where a lot of our businesses and owners are at their peak of operation.
Great, thanks, Priscilla. And now we can turn it over to Melanie, and she'll be facilitating the rest of our program today. Thanks everyone for being here.
Okay, that was weird. Sorry. Hi there. Thank you, Jordan, and thank you, Priscilla. And Priscilla, I wanted to congratulate you on your new position. We're all super excited for you. So let's talk about today in our intended key learnings, which will include financial practices to develop strong business procedures, pricing your products to drive sales, managing revenue and costs, product add-ons and training guides to sell them, and COVID-19 impacts on revenue and profit. All awesome stuff. So our schedule today starts with introducing our speakers, and then today's presentation, Successfully Manage Finances and Build Profit, with Russell from the ATTA. After Russell's presentation, everyone will break into small groups to discuss what you learned. So stay with us for this opportunity. You can share what already works for you and learn from others in our community. And we'll follow with a group discussion and an opportunity to ask Russell more questions. So first, let me introduce Russell. He is joining us from Maine, where he is lucky to be able to cross-country ski out his back door. Russell has been a part of the outdoor community for a few decades, we'll say, currently as president of the Northern Outdoors Four Season Adventure Resort, and also as the North America Regional Director for the ATTA. And when possible, Russell loves to go whitewater rafting. So Russell, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce the ATTA and what that means and start your presentation.
Thank you, Melanie, and thank you to Jordan and to Scott from Travel Oregon for sort of helping us work through this and being able to bring this to you, and also Priscilla for her role in this, and congratulations again on your new position there. So a little bit about the ATTA for those of you that may not know anything about us. It's an Adventure Travel Trade Association. We're really about 15 years old, 16 years old, born in the Northwest, up in Seattle, with the idea to really find a way to galvanize and share best practices for outfitters, guides, destinations, media, etc. And over that 15 years, we've kind of seen ourselves with quite a journey, and really seen an explosion of interest, not just from here in North America, US, Canada, but also around the globe. So now we find ourselves as this global community of practitioners, outfitters, guides, destinations. And the ATTA is basically a membership organization. It has a dues paying membership arm to it. I'm not going to try and sell that. There are community memberships available for free. And then we work with destinations and DMOs, destination management organizations, and the media on specific strategic issues as well. So some of those might be education, such as what we're doing today. Some of it might be familiarization trips and other forms of training. So hopefully that's a little bit about us. We're about 1,400 members strong around the globe, with about 60% of those members coming from North America. So North America is still doing strong. I mentioned events. Events have been in the past a pretty successful and a pretty vibrant part of the ATTA. It really is a networking, sharing community. And as we all know what happened to events over the last year, most of those events have been like this, virtual. We've got good at managing some of those as an organization. And we're looking forward really to going back to in-person events. Our first, well, actually, it'd likely be our second. The first event might be we're hoping for it to be in Japan in the summer, but our second event, in-person event, is going to be Adventure Elevate in Sedona in November. About 250 people, media, outfitters, guides, all come together to learn, share, network, best practices, and then there's a marketplace component where people can try and find new avenues to new channels to sell their trips, or if they're looking for new partners and things of that nature. So we hope to see people at that event. And one of the reasons, so why am I here in Oregon? One of the reasons I think that we're speaking here is that we've started this discussion with the idea that Adventure Elevate in 2022 is going to be in Eugene, Oregon. We were supposed to be there in 2020, but as we know, that got canceled or postponed. So we're looking forward to being in Oregon in the spring of 2022 for Adventure Elevate there. So that's a little about that. So I guess it's up to me now, Melanie, to share my screen, correct? And hopefully I'm going to do that as efficiently as I have seen Jordan and Melanie do. So please bear with me, folks, while I try and make sure I make this work. So hopefully, maybe I'll get a thumbs up or a nod from folks that you are seeing my screen share and how to successfully manage finances and build for profit. So for the purposes of today, we're not going to focus on accounting methods. Really, that's for your accountants. For the purposes of today, what we're going to focus on is how do we manage the resources of cash, some of those scant resources that we have available to ourselves in these times of unpredictable COVID nature and whatever is going to emerge out of this. And it's been my experience. I've been involved in the outfitter and guiding space for, as Melanie nicely says, quite a long time, probably 30 years. In addition to my role in Maine, prior to coming to Maine, I was on the West Coast, and I was the general manager of Oars, which is a pretty large, for those of you that know, pretty large West Coast outfitter with operations on the West Coast and around the globe. And, I think that one of the things that I've seen and learned as I've been working with the guide and outfitter community is we all know this is a lifestyle. It's somewhere we all put our passions and our hearts and our entire selves. And sometimes we don't pay attention to the financial aspects as perhaps we could or should. And this is really meant to be a bit of a primer on just a health check on some of the tools. And Melanie's been really, and Melanie and Jordan have been really sure to make sure that we leave you with some takeaway tools that you can use in your businesses, in your endeavors, to try and help you with that health check and know where you're at. Part of, I think, guiding is knowing where you're at in the landscape, on the river, on the lake, in the mountains at any given time. And part of, I think, the health of our organizations is knowing where you're at with your company, with your organization, as it relates to your finances. So that's where I hope to go with this. That's the goal of today. And really, I'm going to talk about 5 key drivers. And I know, and I appreciate all of you for stepping up into this. This is, on a Wednesday afternoon, I am sure there's probably not one person here that raised their hand and thought, wow, fantastic. I can go to a financial hour-and-a-half seminar or something. And learn how to deal with that. But it is such an integral, important part of everything we do. It is the foundation of what we do. And as I've tried to learn about these things and apply them in my own businesses and my own endeavors, and also then working with others literally around the globe on some of these things, what I've learned is that there are kind of 5 key drivers. And I learned a lot of this from a gentleman by the name of Kevin Cope. And I think he's an Australian, a firm that he had, Acumen Learning. And he kind of adapted 5 key drivers. And I've taken them and adapted them very slightly to the world of outfitting. You know, what we want to do here is we want to be able to see the big picture, to know where we are, and use money as a resource, much as we use everything else, the assets that we have. So, and those 5 key drivers basically are, and I'm going to go through this in a little while, but you know, people are a key driver within this idea of finances. People, cash, profit, assets, and feedback. And that may not be the normal fundamental 5 key drivers that we think about when we're learning about accounting or finances. But I've kind of applied these and learned these from my own business and as I say, around the globe. And it seems to resonate and work, at least with the outfitting world. So just to dive into those a little bit, you know, we all know this. People, they're the center of our businesses. They're the people that make the decisions. They're the guides. They're the drivers. They're the people that buy the product. They provide the labor and they provide the services. They also provide the cash to pay for our habits that we have as guides and outfitters. Maybe they're the ones that are allowing us to leave these lifestyles. So people are at the center of some of this financial planning, financial methodology. Without people, we don't have anybody making the cash register ring, and we don't have anybody to run our trips. So please don't underestimate the power of the people within this mechanism. Cash. This is really at the heart of it. Cash is the fuel that drives our businesses or our endeavors. Without it, we can't pay the bill, we can't pay our employees, we can't buy the goods and services, we can't invest, we can't take our businesses forward. A business without cash is really a business is a dream, and or a nightmare. And really, cash oftentimes, you know, we in this lifestyle business, it's seen as kind of a dirty word. We're paying the man, we're dealing in cash, but it is that very essential lifeblood that keeps us all going. Profit. You know, you're all business people, you're all involved in this, so I know you know this, but it doesn't hurt to say it one more time. I mean, profit, quite simply, and one place where this presentation might come in useful in some way. We are going to leave you with the presentation. It might be something that you can take snippets out and share with your staff. Because all too often, you know, we get the questions of how much profit to make. Why do we need to make a profit? Well, clearly we need to make a profit to be able to invest back in our staff, communities, businesses, and profit, quite simply put, is the difference you make by, you know, selling the goods and services over how much it costs to produce them. Sometimes when I'm working with guides or working with, you know, some of our staff, that very simple fact is kind of lost, and we have to sort of come back to, why are we here? What are we doing this for? And part of that is because we need to make that profit to be able to drive the rest of our habits, lifestyles, businesses. Assets. Assets are really the, and I'll just before I just wanted to sort of go, I'm going to go back if I can to profit for a second. I mean, I talk about lifestyle business, but I mean, the old joke that I think appears in the ski industry is, you know, how do you make a small profit in the ski business? Well, you start off with how do you make a small fortune, sorry, in the ski business? And the joke is, obviously, you start with a large one. And really, we don't want to be that place. We want to be where we're not having to invest money to lose money. We're looking about how do we invest money to make money in everything that we're trying to do here. And I know there's a potentially a couple of nonprofit people initiatives on the call or part of this. And still, even in the nonprofit world, we have to make that difference between the cost of our goods and services, that money that we take in, over the income versus over the cost of those, to be able to even continue running through our nonprofit endeavors. So the assets, the assets include everything that a company uses to produce these revenues, and it can also be extended a little bit, I think, in the language and the landscape of guiding, to think about our local community. Our local communities are assets. They're not assets that we own, but they're assets that we draw upon to help manage our business or run our businesses. Think about trails, think about boat landings, think about how we can help to contribute, to look after those things. All of those things are, assets that we have to think about when we're managing these businesses. Data is another asset that I often think about in the outfitting business, that as well as people being an asset, and the resources, the natural resource being an asset, the community being an asset. Think about data. I mean, in the business that we're in, it's often perceived as risky, as compared to a lodging business, perhaps. In a lodging business, when somebody comes to your lodge or your cabin, or you might only collect one signature. You might only collect one person who signs on the check or signs the confirmation. You might only connect their data. In the business that we're in, oftentimes we're dealing with release forms, and every single person that comes through our doors is going to sign that release form. That's another asset that we have. If there's 4 people in the party, that's 4 people now that we have to mail to or communicate to, and it's a way that we can expand our network. We've all seen to perhaps chagrin, or to perhaps bad examples of how technology companies are using data as a secret weapon and their own asset. Well, I would say to us that data is an asset that we can use in the outfitting guiding business. It informs what we do, but it also allows us to communicate with a larger and broader population over time. So really think about these assets: human, nature, data, and how you're going to weave all of those together in your initiative, in your endeavor, in your business, in your project to drive the thing forward. And one of the other critical 5 drivers is feedback. I use this a lot. I know we use it at the ATTA a lot. I hope you use it in your businesses a lot. It's why, where does feedback come in a financial presentation? Well, it comes back in the form of, the ledger. How are we doing? The money's coming in versus the money's going out. But how does it reconcile with what our guests are saying to us? We have to be really cognizant and really open and really keenly attuned to what they're saying at the trip level, at the company level, at the individual level, at the pricing level. Guests can inform everything we do. They're an incredible asset, and asking for their feedback and being attuned and aware of what it is they have to sell. Well, what is they have to say about their experience, or even the fact that they didn't come with you. Maybe there's a way that you can elicit their feedback if they chose not to come with you on a particular year. Harness that feedback wherever you can, as a part of not only your product strategy but your financial strategy, because it is a gift. It is very, very valuable if you choose to use it. Now, you could be So sure and so adept at what is you're doing, you don't need the feedback of your guests or your population. Well, good for you. I know I found it that in this world that we're in right now, and everything is moving so quickly, and we have to be so nimble that we have to keep attuned to the guest and what their wants, needs, desires are. So I would really encourage you, as part of an overall, even a financial plan, to build in feedback loops there so that you know where you're at, to help calibrate. So having got those 5 drivers, for those of you that I wish I was in some cases, I wish I was in a room where I could ask people to raise their hands and find out who runs with a budget, or who runs on cash flow, or who runs on a whim and a prayer. How do we run our businesses? I'm assuming from this perspective, the perspective I'm looking at right now is that maybe you're here because you feel that you'd like to know a little bit more, or you'd like some new tools, or you'd like some tips, or to share ideas, or maybe you're really adept at this and you'd like to share your knowledge with the rest of us on the call. I'm hoping you get the chance to do that in the breakout sessions and a little bit later, because I think some of the richness of, I'm sure TOGO, I know the ATTA and the Guides and Outfitter community, is that the sharing of best practices, the networking, the learning from others is really, really how we get to make things to better and live these lives that we're blessed to live in these locations. So, what I would say to you is, if assuming you are coming from the place where it's a little bit muddy and you haven't got you're not attuned to a budget every single minute of the day, and I hope you're not anyway. We should be outside running our businesses. Don't be overwhelmed. Melanie's going to go through an example in a little while where she'll be showing an example of how you might price a particular trip or a component. And then I'm going to take some examples of how we might take that and extrapolate it out over a course of a season, or a quarter, or even on a week-to-week basis. So I would really say, encourage you, be a student of this if you're coming to this for the first time. It can be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. You can start with, you could start with one cost center. You could start with one trip, as Melanie's going to explain to you, just to get a handle on what is my income in this particular trip? What are my expenses? And let's be real, let's call out all of the expenses, because if we've got a pet trip that we really want to run, and we've all got these trips, it's our favorite, we really want to run it, but it's running at a loss, and it's holding everything back, it's not going to help the overall endeavor over time. So I think that this requires some honesty of ourselves and some openness with our workmates and perhaps our partners in this, because it really does, no one size fits all. No one person has got the keys to all of this. I would say, don't try and, if you're new to this, don't try and tackle everything at once to come up with the perfect annual budget. I kind of laugh, and I don't think it's so much the practice now, but it has been the practice in the past. Set out a 5-year budget. I personally, I can set out an 18-month budget. I don't know where the world is going to be or where I'm going to be in 18 months from now. So trying to think about setting out the perfect 5-year budget for a small or even medium-sized, outfitter tour business can be a little intimidating. I don't believe you'll ever, unless you're really disciplined, you may get discouraged and you may not get to that place. So think about it in small bite-sized increments. tackle one or two elements, one or two of your trips, different cost centers, and start to build pieces together. And I'll show you once Melanie's done her piece, how we can sort of bring a number of those things together. And I would encourage you to think of this often thorny, sometimes not glamorous, very dry subject. Think of it as a journey. Think of it like we do all of our trips. The financial journey is going to change. It's going to be dynamic, and you have to have tools and be willing to adapt along the way to be able to ride out. Well, if we'd have had these tools 18 months ago, maybe we could ride out what we just saw in the last 12 months. But the next 12 months are going to be no different, unfortunately. I mean, we're going to see whether it's fires or pandemics or whatever the natural disaster of the day is going to be. We need to be prepared for those. And this is what we're trying to do. So don't get too discouraged. Pick something and start to dig away at it. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen, hopefully in just a second. Melanie is going to share her screen, and then we'll come back to me in just a little bit more.
All right, and I think everyone can see the Excel sheet that I've pulled up. This is the tour pricing worksheet that all of you should have received in an email from Travel Oregon. And for those of you who have not yet looked at it, I just wanted to quickly show you around. So at the top here is where you can put in, say you have 6 guests that are adults that are going to pay $650 for a 3-day tour. And there are 4 kids coming along and they are paying $50 or $500 each. And then all the expenses are in here. I hid, there were 3 other rows of other tour costs just so you could all see this. But, lodging, which means 6 hotel rooms. So, maybe the adults and children are sharing, it's $95 a night, 3-day tour. So they're staying 2 nights in a hotel. This shows that it's 19% of the income coming in is going towards hotels. And so it drops from here. I normally wouldn't put like your average insurance, like dividing it down into tours, but just the cost, the expenses that you have per tour, paying for breakfast, paying for lunches and dinners, your guides, you could have another tour cost because sometimes the lead guides, you pay more than you do to other guides. Putting gas in, that's what transportation is. Sometimes for multi-day tours, you give out swag. Everyone who comes on the tour gets a pint glass or a t-shirt. That's where this cost. And, shirts was put in here, but you can put in your own thing. And then at the bottom, you can see your expenses are for 68% for this amount, and your profit is right here. So the goal of this sheet is to confirm your expenses per tour so you can make calculated decisions. This is really important when pricing your tour products. And beyond that, it can motivate you to create add-ons beyond to create even more profit. I know they're getting a t-shirt, but if we upsell them a sweatshirt or pint glasses, or we'll pick you up at the airport, or we'll pick up equipment for you and have it ready to go, you could add that into the income and see your gross profit come up. Also, it's really important to confirm that you're making a minimum of 30% gross profit per tour. So you can see this here. I mean, really, an exceptional tour profit would be in the 50% area. When you think about really 30% is only $1,800. How many of these tours do you need to cover your monthly expenses? So this really helps you start the math and move forward with it. Another goal is to be able to break apart which aspects of the tour have the highest expense. A great way to highlight what areas you might want to explore to look for more affordable options. Of course, dinner is going to be more expensive, but you could just kind of look on here and say, wow, breakfast, we're spending a lot. How do we bring that price down? And hotel rooms is always a great thing. Our next talk on the 24th is about working with vendors and how to profit off of them. And this is one of the areas hotels that the next conversation will get into. So just planting a seed. Hopefully you'll come back in a couple weeks. And I just want to share at Cogwild, when I ran Cogwild, I trained my office staff to use this exact Excel spreadsheet when people called for private tours that included things like hotel rooms or additional activities that we normally didn't offer for one-day group tours. So we had a specific minimum gross profit, so the staff could just plug in all the expenses, set a minimum number of guests for the tour to happen, and then confirm what the price would be without having to talk to anyone. All the staff were on point. They understood, we are not doing any special tours without a specific gross profit. And same, when you are setting your tour costs at the beginning of the season, how much are you going to be charging for the half day, the full day tour, the multi-day tours, these specific tours? You can use this really simple sheet to type it in, and just starting with your minimum numbers. What do I need? If I have 2 guests, how much do I need to charge? If I have 4 guests, how much do I need to charge? So it's really helpful. This is a tool to incorporate into your business to ensure you're profitable as much as possible. So we can discuss this more in the question and answer section if you have any questions. Otherwise, I am going to unscreen share, and Russell, I'm going to send this back to you.
All right, thank you. And let me. Okay, so thank you, Melanie. So we kind of take what Melanie just talked about in terms of the one trip or the one accommodation or one component. And now what we're trying to do, and as I mentioned at the very beginning of this, we're talking about a cash flow business. We're not talking about accrual. We're talking about the mere art of money, just cash coming into your business. And the way this sample cash flow worksheet is set up, and I will say that in my own business in which I use this, I've actually got the columns marked Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 for the purposes of this. They're in weeks. So week 1, week 2, week 3, all the way through week 52. And whatever happens, and I hope you can see my arrow on the screen, my cursor on the screen. Whatever happens with your beginning cash, then sort of trickles down. You gain some cash. You started with cash. You gain some cash. New receipts coming in. Advance on a line of credit, miscellaneous proceeds. Maybe that's I don't know. Maybe it's payroll protection money that you got came in. That would go on this line here. Then and this is a very simplified form, but it's meant to be simple because it's just a quick guide. Then you've got all the outgoings for, in this case, the quarter, the accounts payable, all of your invoices, all of your bills for food and vendors. You've got your payroll, including burden, federal and state burden. That's what we mean by that. You got minor petty cash expenses, all have to be accounted for. And that comes up with the total cash disbursements, so that we're ending, by the time we've taken the beginning cash, the cash receipts, the cash that we brought in, the cash that's gone out, we end up with an ending cash line for the quarter, or in my case, I use that the week. And these are just a few little calculations, net increase, decrease in cash. There's one little caveat under here is that oftentimes we're carrying unpaid payables. So those are sort of invoices in transit. They haven't quite been approved. They've been received, but haven't been approved. And if we don't add them back into the calculation, we can be off in our calculation. So we have a true cash position, which we monitor then on a weekly basis. That doesn't drive up here. The one that drives back to Q2 is from the ending cash, and then we follow that process all the way through. And that in this particular example, a great example, we saw that we started the year with $267,000 worth of cash to get us going. We worked through the 4 quarters, and by the time we ended the season, by the time we ended the year, we were in a cash position of $319,000, almost $320,000. So it's a really simple example. we are going to provide you with this cash flow diagram, and I'm going to stop this share for a second, and I'm going to hopefully, yes, I'm going to pull up. So this is that same, hopefully this work, Melanie will tell me if it's not working, but this is that same cash flow chart now, but in the real life Excel spreadsheet that we're going to send to you as part of this. And you can see that dynamically, if I were to change the income coming in over here to, we just dropped $40,000 in income in the first quarter, that then flows through, and our ending cash is no longer 319, but it's 374. So you can see how that drops through. And I would encourage you to plug this into your own places, play with it. As I say, if you feel like what you want to do is make every one of these columns a week, then it's easy to do. Just do some cut and pasting. For the purposes of really thinking through, and I know I claimed I said not to do 5-year budgets, but I do 3-year cash flow projections. You can then take the ending number from Q4 of this year, and that becomes the beginning number of Q1 in 2022. And so we can actually, by kind of scrolling down, in this case, I think there's 3 years, we can see if everything stayed the same, all that, our projections, and we were estimating income and estimating receipts for the next 3 years, we can then have where are we going to be in cash at the end of 3 years? And that's kind of helpful. As I say, it's a very dynamic. I don't bet on that. I don't, take that to the bank, but it's a good guide that we're shooting for. So that's just how you use this particular tool. As I said, we'll be sharing this tool right afterwards. So I'm going to try and now stop this share and go back to the original PowerPoint right here. And let me see. One second, if you will bear with me, just one more second. And hopefully you're able to see my slide, although it looks like I'm looking at the
So we can see your slide, but it looks like it's the full PowerPoint window.
right.
If it doesn't go into the slide, this should work.
Let me just, nope, I don't want to do that. Hold on. Undo that slide. I wonder, Melanie, whether we could go back to you managing the slideshow, and I can ask you to advance for me. Would that work?
Can you give me a minute to get ready and I'll let you know, but yes.
Yeah, that way there's something. Sorry about this.
I could screen share as well. I'll just go ahead and do that for the rest of Russell's, Melanie.
Yeah, for some reason it's.
Great.
Are you able to screen share?
Yes, I will start mine right now.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay.
And I'll just ask you if you don't mind advancing the slide. So actually I could go to the slide 11 if we could.
Can you see it now?
Yes, I can. And could we go to the next one? Perfect. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. It always works in practice, right? But anyway, just to sort of move this along, so that we don't keep watching my blank screen. I think, those are some of the things that we've tried to bring forward here. A couple of tools that you can use and happily answer some questions about them. Other people might have other examples. I think the other thing that we wanted to bring here is that, we've got our trips and services, and we really wanted to talk about the opportunities for add-ons and ancillary revenue. And I think about things in terms of a couple of revenue streams. Primary revenue, that's the revenue that we would be receiving from our trips and services, or lodging in my case, where we run trip services and lodging. And then secondary income is the income that might come from, food, beverage, retail operations, rental equipment, commissions, working with local guides, upselling an extra, a value-added extra, an insurance or something. And I'm always reminding, I think Peter Grubb is on this line, but Peter will, for one at least, know there is a gentleman, Imre Szlatsky, who's a famous, he's a founder of a large East Coast rafting company. He's also a brilliant Hungarian mathematician. And he would always say, I will sell my raft company to my staff for $1, as long as I can have the t-shirt concession. The secondary income to him was as important as part of his trips. And it's kind of the same, part of that is it's the same model as the printers, right? Where you buy a printer and you don't pay for the printer, or you pay little money for the printer, but you'll pay for the ink over time. So these add-ons really, really help. I would say just don't get burned in that. Don't get so enamored by your add-ons that you get off into difficulty and get out of your depth, and it takes away from your primary business focus. I've seen lots and lots of people in the outfitting business where they think that t-shirts, hats, and swag and all of those things are so very important, and they'll go out and make a huge buy of sweatshirts at the beginning of the year because they got a volume price, but they then sit on that for the whole year. There's no need to do that. You can buy in increments. I know in my business we found that, and I'm sure others of you, even the way your clients, the mix of your clients changes throughout the season. We see a different client base in May and June than we see in July and August, than we see in September and October, and clearly different in the winter. Each one of those different client bases has different retail needs, different sizes. So really, again, I asked you to be a student of the finances. If you're gonna do the add-ons, be a student of the add-ons, so that the add-ons aren't the thing that cause you grief or cause you not to be able to focus in on your primary business. So I do think that important. The add-ons are a really important part of that. If we could advance one more slide, please. And I would also say, and this is in deference, this is in deference to our staff. We as business owners or partners in this, we get this idea somebody else is selling all kinds of add-ons and this product and that product, and we really think that we should be doing the same. Make it easy. Make it easy for your staff to do. They've had a long day on the trail. They've had a long day on the river. It's just one more thing for them to have to deal with. We've got to do a slideshow. We've got to do the photos. So have a little compassion to staff, or help them in some way so that they can, benefit from these things. Let the, I think about when I deal with staff and I've trained staff, is that, staff like the familiar, whether it's familiar clothing, familiar product, familiar gear. They like to be associated with that. Make sure it's quality. Just because your uncle has a brewery and you think it's great and he thinks it's great, but we all know that the beer is really bad, they're not going to get behind that if they think it's if it's a bad product. They've got to stand behind that. Appreciation, say thank you to those staff if they are going that extra mile and they are engaging and they were able to sell an add-on or a commission trip to spend an extra day at your place. It goes a long way. And offer them training if you're going to be adding a new trip. If you're a rafting outfitter and you're going to work with a horseback outfit, then try and get those guides behind that. Give them the education, give them the training, get them on the trip, get them to see what it looks like, so that they can speak intelligently about what it is. And we all know, I always say, facts tell, stories sell. So that they can be working at that level for you. So as owners, this primary income, secondary income idea is wonderful. It makes a big impact in a lot of our businesses, but we have to be careful to calibrate it that it's not the straw that broke the staff's camel's back in a way, that we're just asking them to do too much. If we can advance one more slide, please. And I got a few minutes left. So I would just say, managing in a COVID environment, it's never been easy, and it's never been more difficult. We don't know where we're going to be. We don't know where we are in all of this. We don't know when we're coming out of this. We don't know, what might happen next. So that's why you have to have the framework, the tools to be able to let you know where you are in that process. I would say that, and a lot of this work comes from a presentation we did at the ATTA with a group called Flywire, which is going to be part of the takeaway to this. So if you're really interested in, managing these tools, then please dive into that a little bit more. But review, take a look at your cancellation and payment policies. It's all changing. People aren't going to pay you a month, 2 months out like perhaps they used to. They're going to want that shortened. That's going to have an impact on your cash flow, because you're not going to receive that money 1 month out. You're going to receive that money 2 months now. So you've got to have that and be prepared for that. So really look hard at your cancellation policies and payment policies and try and reconcile everything against that. Diversify your business lines. If you're in the food business, think about food to go. If you're in the outfitting business, think about half day or shorter trips, because people aren't traveling intercontinentally anymore. They're traveling from closer to home. So maybe it means that they can get in. Maybe the downside of that is that they can leave quicker too if you're in the lodging business. But really look at everything that you've got going on. I suspect that many in Oregon have done really well in the outdoor nature piece in the pandemic. But we have to wonder, is that always going to be the case? So just because we're doing well today, now, what does that mean when you plug that into your 2-year cash flow chart? Will you always rely on that? I think you need to take a look at that. And then, consider partnership and thinking about, other opportunities. Maybe it's survival. We've seen plenty of cases where we've seen formerly outbound operators, people that were operating, they were based here in the US, had strong businesses in taking people overseas that haven't been able to do that. But they've got a marketing base, they've got a client base that's domestic. And I know of one story where a particular outfit, a particular tour operator who was taking their trips to Europe would never ever consider running trips here in North America. It was frankly beneath them. We weren't as sexy or as cosmopolitan. Well, guess what? In times of COVID, They've run trips in Vermont and New York, and they've developed a new business line. And that's 2-day weekend trips for the domestic operation. They have already said that post-COVID, they're going to maintain that business line as a feeder operation to their operation that takes people overseas. So think about who those people are in your state, in your area that you could work with. If we could just advance one more slide, please. And a little bit of, we say dive deeper. We are going to do some follow-ups on this. There is a financial strategies and tactics for adventure travel businesses during the economic uncertainty during COVID times. That was a Flywire presentation. So we'll definitely be sending that as a part of this. And obviously the different sheets that Melanie and I have shared with you. The Flywire has got a lot of focus on transactions and credit cards and fees. But like, as I say, be a student. I mean, every aspect of your financial health is really important to make sure that you're around to survive to 2022 and 2023 and a vibrant part of your community. If we can just go to the closing slide or the conclusion slide. Thank you. So my conclusions in managing finances, and this is the world according to Russell, of which I apologize, but it's not to develop a 5-year plan 5-year business plan that you have to stick to, because it's going to change. It's going to evolve. You're going to have to be nimble, and that's where tools such as the cash flow spreadsheet can really help you map out a plan, but know that you can run different scenarios at any given time. I would be open. You have to be open to new ideas. Some of those ideas come from your staff. Some of those ideas come from your guests. Don't be afraid to share your ideas. Don't be afraid, as Melanie said, to share the tools that she has to show staff, the impacts of every little aspect of their trip. Yeah, we'd all like to give t-shirts away and sweatshirts away, but when that really impacts the profitability of a trip, it makes us wonder whether that trip is actually going to be viable. We can't do that. We need to show our staff why that is the case, and give opportunities for guests to share their feedback, the good, the bad, on the product, on the performance, and on price. You'll know if you've got a good clientele. They're going to tell you when they think things are good value, and when you perhaps are overreaching, and what have you. You can also use price of trips as a way to spread out load across the business season. That's a whole different topic area, but something just to think about. So I think I'm right up on time. I apologize that the last little bit was a little bit rushed, but hopefully I'm going to hand back to Melanie right now, and then she's going to take us through the next step of this little journey.
Awesome, thank you. And going back to your guests telling you that they will let you know if things are priced right, another way of seeing that is in the review that they leave. A lot of times, depending on whether they thought they got their money's worth, it can really shine in the review, or it just comes across as dull. So that's one way to read those of like, okay, are we pricing things correctly? Awesome. Well, thank you, Russell. Your presentation was really interesting and educational. I learned a lot, and I hope everyone did as well. And now we're going to move forward to our breakout groups so everyone can talk and share. So please note, everyone, after this is over, the forum, we can continue the conversation on Basecamp. So if there's any more questions or ideas that people have, please post them on the Basecamp forum. We'd love to hear your feedback as well. I mean, it's all helpful for all of us to be successful. So we'll have more details about Basecamp later. So now we're going to break everyone into groups for a total of 20 minutes to give everybody an opportunity to talk about your business and also learn from others. So what we're going to ask is that everyone goes around the room and have everyone talk for 2 to 3 minutes, specifically sharing 2 things. What did you learn from the presentation and how will it be useful for your business? And also, do you have any suggestions from your business that you could share? So if possible, have another person keep track of the person who's speaking time so everyone has the chance to talk. After your group can use the remaining time for a group discussion about what you learned today.
Come back.
Welcome back, everybody. Think we all back from the groups. Awesome. So sweet. Thumbs up. That's a good sign. Hope that was really beneficial for everyone to kind of have some one-on-one conversations. And now we can have a big group discussion, ask Russell questions about his presentation or my Excel sheet, and also give everyone an opportunity to share themselves at a group level. So that said, please feel free to unmute your mic and just see, does anyone have a question that they would like to put out to the whole group? Miles, I see you've unmuted. Anything you want to share?
Yeah, I guess related to COVID response and the issue of finding non-primary revenue streams. Early on, I talked with a number of businesses that were looking at selling online. Their interpretive skills, their kind of tour skills, but then shipping out some product, and most of these were food-based or drink-based, so that they could then coordinate an activity. I wondered if people could share, one, are they looking for that, because that's something maybe we can help with, or examples of them being able to sell things, quote, online, as opposed to the live tours that they couldn't do.
And Miles, can you share what your business does?
So my primary role is I work as a professor with OSU Extension to help guides and other businesses and train guides and communities. But on the side, a little bit, I lead tours to Costa Rica, Central America, kind of nature-based adventure, soft adventure.
Nice. Yeah, does anyone like to share feedback or just give a response?
I mean, I could jump in, Melanie. I know a number of people that have done some virtual tours. And I know a number of people that have done, the online education piece. Very early on, the virtual tours and the online education pieces were, at rock bottom rates. We're talking virtual tours for $9 and $20 for day-long virtual education pieces. And what they recognized was that the costs involved in setting up all of those things were actually adding up to the point back to the profit and loss. They weren't making any extra revenue. They were keeping themselves, front and center in front of their guests or a new clientele. I have heard the one business I've heard that's done super well is the language businesses. So learn a new language while at home. So find ways to package that or affiliate with those if you're going to Costa Rica or you're going to somewhere else. If there's a way that you could affiliate in some way, but I haven't heard of a lot of businesses that have cracked the code in terms of the virtual piece. Maybe others have.
Yeah, I don't think.
I know that's a hard one.
Yeah.
Go on.
Something that some of our outfitters have done, I'm not sure if they've monetized it or not, but they've seen a lot of positive responses and engagement with online education or just online talks as a way to better engage with their industry and to get folks interested in it. So one of our raft guides does online discussion and YouTube series about like safety topics and rowing techniques, and has gotten a lot of participation through that. So I wonder if there's an avenue through there, you know, that's somewhat connected with our industry, but more education and informational entertainment focused.
Priscilla, do you know if that provider had a charge extra for those educational videos, or were they part of the package for the trip that they were booking?
I believe that he just started doing it since the pandemic started. I think all of his content has been free, and then there's been a few like paid webinars where you do a registration, kind of like this event and those sorts of things. But at this point, he's just trying to gain enough interest through his various channels with the content, and I think his hope is to eventually charge for the educational content and trainings.
And then Reese, it looked like you had your mic off. Do you have a response to this? And Alan, I see as well. So maybe Reese and then Alan.
I don't know if my response would be helpful or just opinionated. But unless it's an experience that you can have at home, I don't think experiences come through online, right? If it can't be something delivered to your door and then guided through maybe an online, like, you know, I have a friend that kind of had a meal and like a tasting tour up in Washington for wine and, you know, and meals. He did a delivery of paired food and wine, right? So he was able to do that and then teach on why, right? Like to really just give, you know, quick one sheets on why this wine pairs with this and look for these, you know, that kind of teaching. But that's an experience that was delivered to somebody instead of them coming to the, you know, get the experience came to them. My personal opinion is anyone who spends any time online for work wants absolutely nothing to do with it for fun. So that's just me. So I just, you know, it's an opportunity for the education and the inside the industries to connect and to drive that education, as, you know, as we were talking about with, you know, kind of knots and rowing and safety side of that, and, you know, just different educational pieces of kind of the river life. But I mean, just trying to create an experience through, you know, an online forum is a tourism-based thing. Just I don't know if it will ever cross that line, right, to be successful. So, like I said, I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Yeah.
It's actually
luckily, yeah, going on.
I was going to say, so actually some good valid points coming across. Delivering an experience that's not pairing food with wine, not being I'm a foodie, but not a whiny guy. I mean, at least my wife says I'm not that whiny, but yeah, I think that going back to that, if you can deliver something like that, a service like that, and monetize it as a business owner, that's great, and it serves the purpose of continuing a service during a pandemic like what we're experiencing. But I think where it lends itself well is providing value added information. Not being able to monetize on something like that, teaching someone how to do something, you know, as part of in preparation of a service or an activity or, you know, an adventure or what have you, a guided service or whatever, is great for marketing and great for promoting your service. And you give away a lot to gain a little as far as the marketing standpoint goes. But I think that's great. I mean, I know that, you know, the difference between getting education, pre-educated for the type of personalities that are out there that love that want to learn all that they're going to learn before they even go out on the mountain bike or paddling or diving or whatever the case might be, or a tour, lends itself on the marketing side. You don't see it necessarily, and it takes a, you know, it's a long ROI, so to speak. But the more that's out there, as far as even just SEO, someone doing YouTube videos, I think that's a great opportunity and a great activity to participate in, especially considering the pandemic situation we have, when that's all there is more downtime. So taking that and monetizing it by turning it into a free service, even if they never monetize it, you know, selling it later on down the road. But that is a great marketing tactic to utilize to help promote your service and promote, you know, whatever it is that you're offering as a tour guide or, you know, whatever the case might be in any service. And it pays off in dividends down the road. Giving away something for free is a great way to garner more business and garner, get your brand out there and get your name out there. It makes a big difference. But being able to monetize it in such a way where you can send someone even recipes or send someone, a type of wine or a type of food, those things can be monetized on a smaller level. But I think it makes a big difference for a small business owner to give away something for free, even if it's just something little and information. It makes a big difference for the consumer on that end.
Definitely. And, I would say here in Oregon, we're lucky that, being as remote as people see us compared to larger cities, that people are still coming. And so it seems that the pivot that most tour operators are needing to do is, instead of like one person joining a tour or getting on a shuttle or in a raft with other people, it's selling the whole raft as a pack, and that, it's your group, or your group is going to be in the shuttle together or on a hike together. And just really, that's where like the tour pricing worksheet comes in, is creating these new packets. What is the minimum amount of price that we could, sell a whole boat on a river raft trip on its own, and cover, still have the 30% profit, or even try and get up to 40 or more without even doing add-ons. So going into the season, you have time to just add those products to your website, and people can plan ahead. Like, okay, it's going to cost more for one person, or, I'm going to bring my whole family and we're going to have to cover the whole van and make it work. But people seem to be doing it. From talking to different tour companies, people want to be safe. And so they see that spending extra for that has a benefit. So, yeah. Any last thoughts on this thread, or any other questions? Otherwise, I have questions for Russell if no one else wants to share.
One thing I do want to say, and I agree with some of those points, and to clarify, I'm not an operator as my day job, but I have seen and heard from businesses who are doing that as well. They're looking at their pricing and based on who they can accommodate. But I think everyone here knows, especially if you're doing outdoor guiding, that last year, especially in Oregon and in our general region, that there were more people outdoors than we've seen in many of the public places. Now, there may not be as many people coming, definitely internationally or even from across the country, that may be high ticket people who would be flying in and taking expensive tours. So it may be a little bit of a challenge. But I'm on a number of mailing lists. I know one of the companies that I follow already has a bunch of their trips sold out for the summer. But people have been traveling and want to travel, and we'll be seeing, we project, not only are we up from what we thought we would be from a tourism standpoint this year, even though we're still down, but we project that people will be traveling substantially over the spring, summer, and fall. But it will be not the international, traveler. It will be more regional, and maybe some folks who travel up from Texas or California or whatnot. So just from a standpoint of your market, it may be thinking about that, but there is a demand out there, and people are craving to get outside. So just trying to figure out how it makes you can make it work financially is probably going to be as much of the story as it is like, are there going to be people who are interested? And it does depend on your business. I know Marty's talked a little bit about some of her specific business comes from like coaches that aren't running right now. But anyway, just some thoughts based on some of the trends that we've seen in the tourism economics data that we've seen to Travel Oregon.
Those are very good points, for sure. And that leads me into the next question for Russell. Just coming from the angles of, looking at profit and getting feedback, what are the most important top things to train guides in, normally and specifically for this year?
how do you,
Russell, yeah.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
I mean, I there are so many important things that we should be training guides in, and we all know that as guides and outfitters. And but I do think we are going to see, and we're seeing it on the East Coast as you're seeing it on the West Coast, more new people who perhaps aren't traditionally outdoor people coming into this landscape and sharing this with us. So I think that we've got to train. I know, one of the things that's going on in a lot of markets that I'm talking to is training people to perhaps work with those that haven't been as skilled or as experienced in the out of doors, have a little grace, have a little bit more tolerance and patience, and not assume that they know what they're getting into. So that comes all the way through the pipeline, right? From the reservation standpoint, to ask the right questions, to make sure that we're putting the right people in the right place at the right time. So I really think it's not expecting, once again, being nimble, not anticipating that the business and the guests that we've seen in the past are going to be the guests and the business that we're seeing today or coming up this summer. In terms of how do you order all of that, that's sort of getting on the front end and just some assumptions based on what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing in the field. How do we've got to train our staff that it is their job to help on the safety factor, and we've got to also empower them to the best extent we can, that when they don't believe that it's safe or prudent or right to take a guest in a particular area or a trip or what have you, to have the ability to deflect that or say no. I mean, that's on the extreme level when we're dealing with highly technical trips. But I also think we've got to make sure that people are well versed in what they're going to be getting into, and just the sunscreens, the take the water, the take your, all of the very simple things that we in the outdoors take for granted. We've got to make sure that our guides are passing that through. You had asked me a previous question as well, Melanie, I think offline, about, how do you take the people, the 5 drivers, and how do you run, how do you make those in importance? I kind of lock 3 of them, 2 of them into 2 different buckets. Cash and profit are the monetization of those 2 things, of the drivers, and the people, the assets, and the feedback are sort of the interpretation of all of those things, and the soft side of those things. And I think, the cash and the profit, you get there by managing your tools, the types of tools that you've shown in the cash flow chart. The people, the assets, the feedback, they contribute by being in tune with what is going on, being in tune at the front end so that we know where we're putting these people, and they are, and being in tune at the back end of listening. I give an example in my own business. You talked about surveys. We survey, probably, I'm sure, just like everybody else, we survey people on every single trip. It's part of that data and that analysis that we get. We don't always get the greatest response in terms of the numbers, but it's still worth doing. It's still a great benchmark. And then we aggregate those, I would say, at the course of a year, and we try, and wherever the biggest weaknesses are, those are the things that we try and put right in the next season or in the next trip or in the next month. In a business like ours, buying new rafts and new trucks is sexy. But when you run a season and you find out that the biggest detriment, the biggest complaint was the quality of your mattresses, then you have to go out and buy $60,000 worth of mattresses. It's really not very sexy. It's really not very exciting. But you can see that the next year in the way that impacts the business coming through. So it's, again, just being open to listen and not assuming that that you as the business owner or you as the guide know what's going on. Your guests will tell you.
I think along with that,
Definitely.
Russell, is is listening to your employees as well, right? They've got their ears on the ground. They're in the front line and listening for that too. That's some great points.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we everything has changed. The consumer has all the power, and our staff have a lot of interaction with the consumer, and they have a lot of power. And we, in today's world, have to be really open to listening and then putting that back into the financial framework. So good.
Russell, I do want to comment on that a little
Awesome.
bit on the consumer's power as well as the employee's power. I totally agree in a long term that the consumer has the power that we have to listen to and change. In a short term, with the COVID environment, I feel like that does pivot a little bit, where it's kind of the operators that have to operate within that have to engage rules that the consumers don't really like. Right. So it's a little bit of like, look, if you want to have fun with us, you're going to follow our rules. You're going to listen to what we are going to tell you to do. It's kind of a temporary, like a higher safety level that we all have to abide by a little bit differently. Not just, hey, don't drown in the river, that, you know, you have to listen to us, but like for us to stay open, fall in line, right? There's a little bit of that. And so it's a little bit, it's been hard because this year we kind of had that, like, we're going to make our customers work for us so that we can keep working. And so that just kind of resonated with me that yes, the consumer has that power, but the demand that operators are going to see, that recreation and outdoor recreation demand specifically, is going to be a little bit crushing this summer, I believe. You know, kind of listen to Scott too, and we see the same thing on the winter side. I talked about it in our small breakout group of the demand we're seeing in winter for outdoor recreation, which will only amplify in the summer. And so, you know, there does have to be a little bit of like, you can't just fold on whatever the consumer is asking you to do, because they don't actually want to abide by a lot of those rules, right? So it is a little bit of temporary. Now they have to work for us right now. But.
No, I totally, sorry, I totally agree. I mean, they're the ones that we're listening to after the fact because they tell us how we did, right? That's the calibration. But yeah, I mean, if we're not standing behind our staff in all of this, I mean, I don't know what it's like in Oregon, but in the state of Maine, if we're not, you know, following protocols and we're not getting certificates of completion on you know, COVID rules from the guest and affidavits, then we can be shut down. And when we tell the guest that, they don't believe it. But when we tell them it's on them, and that we really, you know, it's for the safety of our staff and the safety of our business and the safety of our community, because in some cases our community doesn't want us bringing these guests in from Massachusetts, right? You know that you've had the same thing, I'm sure. So we, as the front line of this, we have to be really on point and really in tune with the idea that it is the safety of our staff first, the safety of our community, and then the safety of our guests. I always kind of subscribe to, there was a book by a famous travel agent by the name of Hal Rosenbluth, and he wrote a book, and the name of the book was The Customer Comes Second, which is not what we all think. That, you know, we always think the customer comes first, but in a lot of cases, the customer, you know, comes after our staff. We have to be able to empower our staff. They're the delivery mechanism to a lot of this stuff, and they're out there while we're looking at spreadsheets.
And I think to speak to that, I think the staff can set that. We as business owners can set the precedent on what the expectation level is and the delivery level, especially in these COVID related, you know, hoops that we have to jump through. And if we can convey to the staff, like, hey, this is how we present it, and you guide that, and it's their attitude, you got to get them on board that it's like, yeah, we got to go through this, but this is for everyone's you know, safety or betterment, or however it is you need to spin it, that it's a positive thing, that it's not a negative thing. The staff can convey that then to the customers. It becomes a positive experience rather than a negative experience, which can make or break the experience for the customer, and thereby, you know, what they're reporting on those on the reviews and so forth down the road for future customers and future return experiences for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if we use that same mechanism as this 2020, we faced COVID. 2021, we're going to face a tsunami of people, and our communities are going to get picked off with us if we're not helping them. We're not standing up for them and really not policing in where we can. So I think that it's another level where we can work with our staff to educate to the best of our abilities. We're not going to be able to uphold everything, but I think that, I've already seen last year good staff flow from businesses that weren't taking things as serious as perhaps they should, to businesses that were going above and beyond. If staff is so important to this equation, then good staff flowing out of a business is going to hurt them over time. So I think we've always at the ATTA now, I think I told Scott this, and it's not blowing smoke, but at the very beginning, one of the reasons we wanted to start to engage with Oregon is that we really hold to high esteem the sort of work that you've done in a lot of your trainings and the rural community stuff. And I think you guys are perceived very much as a leader in a lot of that stuff. So I think that, just imagine where you would be if you didn't have some of those standards, and what a free for all it could become, and how people's interactions of that will be. So I applaud the work you've done and hope you can keep leading.
Setting the bar high, that's awesome. Well, this is a good time. Thank you all for the feedback and just the ideas and sharing. It's all really helpful for all of us, just kind of to see the big picture. And we are at the point I wanted to kind of keep us moving, because I know you all, as much fun as it be here, I want to carry on. So before, Russell, I want to have you kind of give us a recap on top points. I wanted to point out additional resources that will be shared with you all in an email that you'll receive shortly, along with the cash flow worksheet that Russell used today in his presentation. These are the subjects on the screen right now for those who would like to dive deeper into financial strategies. So the links will be in the email I'm sending. And then Russell, can you just give us a recap of your top points from today?
Sure, if I learn how to unmute myself first. Well, I hope that it was the interrelationship of finances and managing those finances, along with communications and strategies, thinking about your people, the assets of the stakeholders around you, and feedback and having a dynamic system. The two tools that I think we've tried to leave you with are both very dynamic in nature. And if you have questions about either one of them, call Melanie, be in contact with Melanie or myself. If you want to see a version of that spreadsheet that's 52 weeks, I'm happy to give it to you. I didn't do that right now because it could be overwhelming, but it's a tool that I've used. So I would just encourage everybody to not necessarily plan a cast in stone 3-5 year plan. You won't live by it. It'll crush you. But really try and develop something that looks out 18 months and maybe has a few scenarios in it. What if this summer is gangbusters? What if, as Scott said, I'm not going to see so many high priced trips coming into town, but we're going to see greater volume, but a lower price point. How's that going to affect your staffing and that staffing line that you put in there? You can run those scenarios. So just be a student, be dynamic, plan as you can through the off season, if this is the off season for you guys, and keep trying to keep the 5 drivers top of mind in terms of the way they all interrelate with each other.
Awesome. Thank you. Very helpful. I mean, all this information is helpful, but just having that focus on where your next steps are is very useful as well. All right, so we are almost done, but I just the last few things to start. Jordan is going to put a survey, is going to share a survey in the chat box, and we're hoping that you all can just click on it now to give us feedback on today's event. We really appreciate your feedback to ensure these events are worthwhile for you. Also, just reiterating, this doesn't have to be the end of the conversation. Please feel free to post on Basecamp if you would like to continue the conversation. And there'll be a link to join Basecamp in the email that you will also be getting with the rest of the details. And you know how Russell said about the worksheet for 52 weeks, you could post in there and we can make sure that it gets to you as well. We also have one more business development forum for you coming up on March 24th, and it'll be the same time as today. The link to register is in the chat. It'll also be coming in other emails. So please register today if you'd like. We're going to be focusing on how to enhance your bottom line through tourism-related vendors, another important subject to help create more profit in your business. So we'll be having another industry professional from ATTA coming to speak to us. This will be another great forum, so we do hope that you will join us. We also want to bring your attention to some of the Travel Oregon past forums we've done that are on the Travel Oregon YouTube channel, where you can check them out. They're available to watch at any time. Subjects include these three, as well as there's one about funding during the pandemic. A great way to get connected to Oregon-wide organizations that can support you through just the whole craze of figuring out what funding is available. So again, click on the link in the chat to be taken to that page. And if you need more details, they are on the industry page, I think. Yes. And that is it. So that's the end of our time together. We want to thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and we wish all of you success, having a successful upcoming season, and look forward to seeing you on the 24th. So have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.